talk all you want if they don't hear you. Okay.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Before we get started, we're going to do the normal roll call of the sites first, and then I'm going to introduce our presenter, and then I'll let her describe her background and a little bit about the training session she's going to do today. So let's first go down all the sites. Aberdeen, DHS.
We are here.
Okay. Brookings.
Brookings is here.
Okay. Mary Leslie Young, are you on? Spearfish? Let's go to Rapid City. Are they on?
We're here.
Okay.
You want somebody to go call Mary Leslie Young?
Yeah, if you want to check and see what's going on.
Up front.
Okay.
Sioux Falls, DHS.
We're here.
Okay. Sioux Falls Rehab Center.
He asked about it.
Watertown.
Watertown's here.
Okay. Yankton.
Yankin's here.
Okay, and Bertie is sending out the sign-in sheet to you guys now.
Yeah.
Huron. Carmen, are you on?
I'm here.
Okay. Jessica.
I'm here.
All right. Let's see. I think that's about everyone besides Mary, and they're checking on to see what's going on with Mary. And the rehab center, that's being checked on too. And we are recording this today, so if folks want to view this at a later date, it is also going to be available there. Everyone should have a sign-in sheet. Make sure you do your sign-in sheet and then send that back to me at the close of this session.
Steve's not there today.
Steve's not there today. I'm going to introduce our guest speaker today, Julia. Is it Julia or Julie? Julie Moore from the St. Mary, or Avera St. Mary's Foundation, and she's going to be presenting on the QPR, which is the Questions, Persuade, and Refer training, correct?
Yes.
And I'm going to let her give us a little background on her, because I don't have a bio on you, so I'm going to let you do that. And at the close of this session, she does have some little handouts that I'm going to be sending out to each office at the close of this training. So, Julie.
Thank you. My name is Julie Moore. I work with the Avera St. Mary's Foundation here in Pierce, South Dakota. I actually commute up from Murdo. I live down there. I have been working in the area of suicide prevention now for the last 5 years. This is a subject that touches me pretty toughly here. It affected my family. About 20 years ago, when Pierre was actually known as the suicide capital of the United States, we had more suicides per capita than anywhere else in the United States. So it was something I always wanted to get into, but I really had to wait until I was able to get my kids raised and out of the house, because it does require a lot of energy and a lot of time. So I do a couple of different trainings, and today we're going to do the QPR. It's Question, Persuade, and Refer. It's a training that can be anywhere from an hour to 4 hours. I'm going to cut it down to an hour and a half. Jan's cringing over here. I also do a 2-day assist training, and that's applied suicide intervention skills training, and that's a 2-day training. That is a very, very interesting training. If you ever get a chance to do one of those trainings, sign up for that. I have very, very good response when we do those. We do them here in Pierre in June and January. This is a little different for me to do a training this way. I've never done it like this, so you'll have to bear with me a little bit. One of the things when we do trainings is I always like to kind of keep an eye on my audience, because this is a subject that can kind of be raw for some people. And since I can't see you all, I'm just going to kind of rely on you guys to keep an eye on the other people in your room. That if they're getting a little emotional and you think that they need to talk to them, go ahead and talk with them after the training. And I'll also give my information out that if anyone would like to get a hold of me, they sure can. So we're going to go ahead and get started with the training right away. I always like to start it out with a story about a bridge. I know that seems kind of weird, but I'll get into why that applies here. This bridge is 76 years old, and it's considered to be an architect marvel. There have been over 1,600 documented suicides off of this bridge. And to be documented, that means that at least 2 people witnessed the suicide that happened. On an average, 2 to 3 people are taken off of this bridge a week. Someone notices that they're in distress and they remove them off the bridge and get them the help that they need. This bridge has the most suicides anywhere in the world. Does anyone know what this bridge is?
I got the large conference room too. So.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Bridge or the San Francisco Bridge or
Golden Gate Bridge.
Golden Gate, okay.
Yep, it's the Golden Gate Bridge. There's been a lot of controversy about whether they should put up anti-jump nets on there, you know, to keep people from jumping. But they feel if someone wants to jump in, and if they really want to complete suicide, they'll just find another place to do that. And other people think that maybe it will plant the thought into their head. So they haven't done anything with that. There has been a study of the 515 people that have been removed off of that bridge because someone saw that they were in crisis. The 515 people got the help that they really needed, and 95% of those people never went back on to complete suicide or try to attempt suicide again. Of those, there's also 32 people who have actually jumped off that bridge and have lived. And that's pretty remarkable in itself because it's a 240-foot drop. And the winds are so high out there that actually what happens when you jump off that bridge is it takes your body and it flattens you out. So when you hit that water, you're hitting it flat. So a lot of damage is done. So it's a miracle that 32 people have lived when they jumped off that bridge. One of those gentlemen that jumped off the bridge, his name is Kevin Hines. He's now 33 years old. Kevin suffers from some mental illnesses. He suffers from bipolar. Someone who suffers from bipolar, they're very paranoid all the time. They have a lot of hallucinations and they hear voices. When he was a senior in high school, it got so bad and so intense that Kevin decided that he couldn't take it anymore. So after he went to his first class one morning, he decided that he was going to complete suicide by jumping off the bridge. He went to the bridge, and when he got to the bridge, he paced back and forth for about 40 minutes trying to decide if he was going to jump or not. The final gate came when he was standing there and he was really distressed and he was thinking about jumping. And some tourists asked him if he would take their picture. And you know, that just really said to him that, you know, people really do not care. And he went ahead and he jumped off the bridge. And Kevin talks about what he remembers, and he remembers every minute of it. I remember every second of it. When my hands left that rail and my legs curled over, as soon as I left the bridge, I thought, I don't want to die. It's a 4-second fall, and of those 4 seconds, I said, God, please save me. I went under. I did not know I was alive. I was all turned around, and I couldn't see. It was all dark, and it was very scary. Then I said, wait a minute, I'm still alive. I can move, but I can't move my legs. I swam with my arms to the surface and got to the surface and took a big gasp of air and begged God to save me. I couldn't yell, I couldn't scream for help. The current was so strong. My point of telling you the story is Kevin, once he jumped, he realized he truly did not want to die. And of those 1,600 people, we believe that the majority of them did not want to die either. And remember, I told you that 515 of those people who were taken off of the bridge and got help, they never went on to want to complete suicide again. They had an intervention, and that's what I'm here to teach you guys today, is how to help someone who is in distress and they're having thoughts of suicide.
They need
I'm
to
gonna tell
mute their
someone
sites.
someone's got a site that isn't muted, so please check your site and make sure the little microphone with the slash is showing on there for near, because you're shuffling papers or something like that, and it kind of comes across. So sorry.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to give you guys a few facts that will kind of hit a little bit closer to home for you guys. By this time tomorrow, over 105 people in the United States will have completed suicide. That means that one person every 14 minutes will die by suicide. here in South Dakota, in the year 2014, 141 people completed suicide. And 12 of those were youth, so that means one youth a month is completing suicide here in South Dakota. Suicide is the second leading cause of death in South Dakota for the age group 15 through 34, regardless of sex or race, which is twice as high as the average throughout South Dakota, throughout the United States. Every year since the year 2009, more people have died by suicide than by vehicle accidents. Many deaths caused by vehicle accidents may be suicides as well. We call those the unreported suicides. There is an estimate of 25 attempts for each documented death by suicide. So in South Dakota in the year 2012, there was 3,525 attempts of suicide in South Dakota. And the cost of that was $1,871,000 in the medical bills for those attempts of suicide that people actually lived in, their injuries that they sustained from them. It is estimated that there is an average of 6 survivors for each death of suicide. And a survivor, when I say the word survivor, it is not someone who actually survived a suicide. A survivor is the family and the loved ones who are left behind. So there's usually 6 on the average immediate people that are affected, but it also depends upon how well the person is connected in the community. I'm from Murdo, and in the last 3 years we have had 3 suicides. And in a small community, it has actually touched everyone in our community, compared to in a bigger town if you have some elderly gentleman that wasn't really connected to the community. So suicide, it really knows no boundaries. It can happen to anyone, anywhere, and at any time. So to prevent suicides from happening, what we do at the foundation is we work in 3 different areas. Postvention, meaning that's what comes after suicidal behavior. And one of the things we do here in Pierce, we have a support group for those survivors of suicide. And it's very, very important that the survivors get the help that they need. When this happened with my family did not talk about it. We did not get the counseling and help that we needed, and eventually it did fester in me, and I did need to get the help. So we tried to get the survivors help as soon as possible. The other area that we work in is the prevention area, and that's actually before they are having those thoughts of suicide. What can we do? And we really promote the 1-800 number and do motivational speeches, how to keep people from getting to that depressed stage. And then the area that we also work in is intervention, and that's where this training falls in. Once that person is having thoughts of suicide, what do you do, and how do you get them the help that they need? And so with that, we're going to go ahead and start with our training, and I assume they all see the PowerPoint, right?
Not yet. Gotta wait, right? Now.
Okay, so we're going to go through the training. This is QPR, and if they have questions, will they be able to stop and ask me? How does that work?
Yes. What
Okay.
they'll do, if you have questions, unmute your site, say your site name and your name and the question, and because sometimes it takes a few seconds to come back or stuff like that. So.
Okay, I try to keep my trainings really casual, so if anytime you're not understanding what I'm saying, just feel free to stop me and ask questions. So QPR is question, persuade, refer. We're going to question them if they're having thoughts of suicide. We're going to persuade them to get help, and then we're going to refer them on to the correct people who can get them the help that they need. QPR is not an intended form of counseling or therapy. We don't do any of that. Our main thing is to notice that the person is in distress and then to get them on. QPR is intended, though, to offer help through positive action. I always tell people there is hope with help. You just need to reach out and ask for it, but most people will not ask for it. That's why we all have to take more notice of what's going on with our friends. The first thing I want to do is I want to go through the symptoms and the facts, and some different myths and facts about suicide, and this will kind of help us throughout our training. The first one, no one can stop a suicide. It's inevitable. That's so wrong. Any of us in this room could stop a suicide from happening. We already talked about 95% of the people taken off that bridge, and they did get help. They did not want to go on to ever want to complete suicide again or attempt suicide again. The second myth, confronting a person about suicide will only make them angry and increase that risk of suicide. Actually talking about it, it really reduces their anxiety. When they're thinking about thoughts of suicide, they're actually making a very important decision in their life. And a lot of times they've been harboring on that decision for a very long time. And just getting them to talk about it helps. So it doesn't make them mad. It relieves that anxiety that they have within themselves. Only experts can prevent suicide, or I said anyone in this room or throughout South Dakota can stop a suicide from happening. It's everyone's business. It's just getting them to open up and talk to them. Our next one is suicidal people keep their plans to themselves. Suicidal people actually send out clues or signals. They're inviting you to ask them what's going on. A lot of people do not know how to ask for help. They're kind of scared. They're scared of telling you what's going on, thinking that maybe you'll run, you won't believe them. So most of them are sending out those clues to you, and they're trying to communicate their thoughts to you. And we'll kind of go through how they do that here in just a little bit. Those who talk about suicide don't really do it. People who talk about suicide may try or even complete an act of self-destruction. If they're talking about it for a reason. Whether if they are just trying to get attention, they're trying to get attention for a reason. You need to follow up on it. One of the questions I get asked, mostly by teachers, is how do I know? Because they threaten it so many times. I say, you know what, you're never going to know. You need to take every single time seriously, because you don't want that to be on your hands. If you decide this time that they really didn't need it. The next myth is suicide happens without warning. We already talked about that. Most of the time, suicidal people are giving out those warnings and their clues. Most of the time we don't see it beforehand, but we usually will notice it after the fact what the signs and clues are. So today we're going to talk quite a bit about those signs and clues. Go ahead. The next one is people who are suicidal are fully intent on dying. We'll talk a little bit more about this, but they're in a state of ambivalence. Part of them wants to live and part of them wants to die, just like Kevin did when he was on that bridge. He was walking back and forth for 40 minutes trying to decide if he really wanted to die or if he didn't. Most do not want to die. They just do not know how to go on living, and they do not know how to ask for the help, but they really do want to live. Sometimes a bad event in one's life can push a person to complete suicide. It's very rare that it's just one event. The best way I can describe it is it's a bunch of problems that come together that form a perfect storm. It's all these different things that we all have. We all have problems in this room, but it's a bunch of them that come together, but it may be one problem that is actually the final straw. Suicide occurs in greatest number around the holidays in November and December. Everyone assumes that that is true, but it's actually in the springtime that we have our roughest times, and I see that all the time this spring here. Here was pretty rough again. And the reason that is because in November and December we all have our family and our friends around us. And then we go through that winter and we keep thinking to ourselves, if we can just get through the winter, if we can make it till spring, things will be better. But really the weather is better, but our problems are still all with us. And then we see everyone else is off in a better mood and things are going better for them, but we're still stuck back in those problems. So we haven't solved all those problems. So actually the springtime is our worst time. If a suicidal youth tells a friend, the friend will tell an adult or get help. I go out and I do a lot of talks with high school kids, and this is one thing I really preach it. But if your friend tells you that they're having thoughts of suicide, you have to tell an adult. This is one secret that you cannot keep, because most of them will not go on to tell an adult. So we really work on trying to get that through kids, that this is something that they need to let an adult know, a teacher or someone. Suicide is the most preventable form of death, and almost any positive action may save a life. So how can you help? That's what we're going to go through right now. Suicidal clues and warning signs. The more clues and signs are observed, the greater the risk. You really need to take all signs seriously. It's really hard to teach the signs and warning signs of suicide because it's not like a kidney disease. I'll refer back to my father-in-law. He was diagnosed with kidney disease about 3 years ago. And when we went into the clinic, they did all these tests and they said, yep, you have all these signs and symptoms. You have kidney disease. It's pretty clear cut, there. But With suicide, it's not like that because it's very individualized. My problems are not the same as your problems. So what may cause me to think about suicide, you would not think about suicide. So it's a little bit harder to tell those signs and symptoms. And the best way that I teach someone the clues and symptoms is you just really got to be observant of the people around you, because it's any change from normal. If someone is usually happy-go-lucky and all of a sudden they're down at times, I'm not saying that they're thinking about suicide, but what I'm saying is you need to pay a little bit more attention to them, get them alone, and talk to them and say, what's going on? You want to talk to me? Do you need to talk? One with kids that I talk about is if they're usually kind of loners and all of a sudden they're out partying and they're really reckless. That might be something that you might want to kind of notice too, the opposite. Kind of pay attention a little bit more. Why are they being like that? So it's a change from normal is what we're really going to be looking at. So some of the different clues that we have, the verbal clues. These ones are pretty direct. They'll just come out and tell you this, and I've actually had people tell me some of these things. I had a person tell me, it doesn't matter anymore, I'm just going to end it all. Well, that was pretty much a sign to me, just because I worked in this area so much of what was going on and what I all knew with that person. I wish I were dead. These are all what we call really direct. These ones are pretty easy to pick up on. If anyone's saying any of these, you really need to pay attention to what's going on in their life. The next one are the indirect verbal clues. I had a young boy that I was working with for quite a while, and I knew he was really struggling with a lot of different things. And one night we were texting, and finally he said to me, he said, you want to know what, Julie, who cares if I'm dead anyway? You know, that's a pretty big clue to me. It doesn't matter anymore, I'm not going to be around much longer. I've heard that one too. These are all indirect verbal clues. They're not coming out and telling you, but when someone are saying these things, you really need to ask a little bit more about what's going on, and we'll talk about that. I had a girl in my office one time, she was a co-worker, she no longer works at the hospital anymore, but she told me, she says, you know, I just feel like I'm a real burden to society. And with everything that I knew what was going on in her life, I knew that I had better shut my door and have the long visit with her. So those are some of the things that you just need to really pay attention and listen to. Some of the other clues that they could be a situational clue. What's going on in their life right now? This is a list of some of the things. And remember I said that it's usually not just one thing, it's a combination of several things that come together, and then one thing might be the final straw. So if you have a person who just got fired or expelled from school, you know, you just need to be watching that person just a little bit more. These are all different things that could cause someone to think about suicide. But if someone is fired, it doesn't mean that they are going to think about suicide. Another one up there that I have seen is a loss of a pet. If you have an elderly person, and really that is their last connection, that's their friend, losing a pet could cause someone to think about suicide. So really anything, any situation could cause someone to think about suicide. Here's some more. These are kind of more like with kids and stuff like that. Anytime you have a suicide in your family, you really need to be watching out for the other ones being exposed to suicide. Does create a greater risk for the other family members. We've had a couple of incidents of those here in central South Dakota where one family member has completed and then another one has gone on to complete after that. So that's one that, you know, anytime there is a suicide in the family, we always try to keep an eye on those. So when you look at all these situational clues that I just showed you, these in here, what do they all have in common? The word is up there a few times.
Loss.
Loss. They all show a loss. We talk about one if someone is sentenced to jail. What did they lose there? Freedom, family, probably some financials. You know, so usually when you look at things, it's the loss. They're feeling a loss. They're feeling a big loss in their life. The other thing that you can look at too is their behavioral clues, and I talked about this a little bit earlier. A change from normal in a person. I talked about the kids with the reckless behavior, feeling trapped, feeling like they can't get out of the problems that they're in. They have no reason to keep going on. Sudden decline or improvement in academic performances. No sense of purpose in life. The way that I best can describe someone who is having thoughts of suicide, if you actually take like a coffee cup and you imagine that there's a bug in the bottom of that cup, and that bug, all he wants to do is get out to that cup, and that cup represents all the problems that any of us in this room have. So that bug, he goes up the side and he just keeps sliding back down. He goes up and he slides back down. He goes up and he slides back down. He's trying everything he can to get out of that cup, and the answers are on the other side of that cup. They can't see those answers to their problems that are so very clear to us. They are right here. The only thing they can see is what is right in front of them. The only thing that they are concentrating on is their immediate problems that they're having. They can't get past that. When I talked about how suicide affected my family, we did not lose a loved one to suicide. My brother had attempted 3 times. The last time was very, very bad. He ended up in Rochester for 6 months. So I was able to talk to him, and one of the things that I asked him, because when you go through this, one of the things that survivors will go through is anger. And I was very, very angry. I asked him how he could do that to our family, and he said, "Julie, I wasn't thinking of my family. They just do not think that." So these are some of the behavioral clues that you really want to watch for. These are what I call the red flag ones. If you ever have anyone that has any of these behaviors, you really need to pay attention to these. Like I said, when my girlfriend walked into my room and said she felt like she was a burden to society, that was just me. Like, shut the door and we're talking, you're not going anywhere. And she was having thoughts of suicide. Profound sense of loneliness. Being alone is different than feeling alone. I am an empty nester as of about 2 months ago, so I'm alone a little bit, and I'm actually kind of enjoying it right now. It may hit me in a little while later, but I don't feel loneliness because I know my kids are just a phone call away. I know my husband is out on the golf course. My friends, I'm not alone, completely alone. So there's a big difference there. There are a lot of people that feel they are completely alone. They have no one to talk to. I just can't imagine having that feeling. They say you could be in New York with 1 million people and be the loneliest person on the face of the earth just because you have no one to talk to. And I just can't imagine not having anyone that I can talk to. But a lot of people who are thinking about suicide, that's how they feel. They feel so alone in the world, and they still feel so alone, and they have to take on their problems and their burdens all by themselves. Stockpiling of pills or acquiring a gun. That's a big one with me. One of the things I talk about is gun safety. Ashley did a fundraiser and a promotional thing with Delta Waterfowl. They're a sportsman group, and they actually helped me raise a lot of money, and we went out and we bought gun locks. And we got them out throughout central South Dakota. I'm a big one of having that done, and I'll have guys say, well, I'm not worried about getting one in our house. And I'm like, well, yeah, but people come visit your house, and if they know you have guns, that's just leaving it open for them. So I'm a big advocate about guns being locked up and being safe with those. So those are some of the behavioral clues. The one thing I do want to talk about is mental illness, and the biggest one is depression. A lot of people have depression. When I talked about with my brother, we didn't get any help. My family never did acknowledge that this is what he did. And we didn't get the counseling that we needed, and I said eventually it festered up. And with me, it came out in depression. It was probably about 8 years ago, and this happened with my brother about 19 years ago, that it did finally come up, and I went into a state of depression. The best way I could describe depression to people is it's like this big black cloud that follows you around, and you can't shake it, and it gets worse and worse, and you're like in this hole, and you just can't feel that happiness that everyone else is feeling. I'm fortunate. I just have the seasonal depression. I say I'm fortunate because I don't have it all the time, and I'm able to control my depression. Usually my family will recognize when I'm kind of getting that way, and there are certain things that I can do to help me keep out of that state. But depression is a big thing. People don't like to talk about it. There's that stigma with it. We'll talk about cancer and diabetes, but we're not talking about that. We'll talk about sex, but there's still that stigma with mental illness. They say out east that if you're not going to a counselor, you're crazy, because everyone out east goes to counselors. They go to life coaches and stuff. But out here, people think we're crazy if we do go to a counselor out west. We really need to work on breaking that stigma down. It is a physical illness, no difference in the cancer and the diabetes. My father-in-law got the diabetes, and it wasn't anything that he did. He was diagnosed with it. I just happened to get the depression, and it was nothing that I did. A lot of people get it, and there is help for depression. You can go on pills. Sometimes you have to try different ones. You don't usually get the first one that will help you, but the early identification treatment is depression really can save lives. And some of the signs and symptoms of depression are listed up here. I'll go through stages where all of a sudden I don't want to leave the house. I'm not interested in anything. I feel sad. I don't ever really get that feeling of hopelessness. And there for a while I would have bouts of crying, and definitely the trouble sleeping and the focusing are big ones with me. And, you know, when I start telling my husband, when he'll ask me a simple question like, what should we have for supper? I'll just say, don't make me think, because I can't think. I kind of know something's going on with me, because usually I'm pretty Johnny on the spot, and I can tell him exactly what we're having. Irritable, I'm very irritable when I'm going through there. Restlessness, easily annoyed, that happens pretty quickly for me. Here are some of the other ones. When I first went to the doctor when I was having a lot of problems, the unexplained physical problems, I was actually going in because I just wasn't feeling good. And the doctor actually looked at me, and I didn't like it, but he told me I was probably going through some depression. But I thought it was actually some physical illnesses is what was going on with me. And eating, it could be either eating too much or eating not enough. Usually I go to the eating too much, not enough. So those are some of the signs and symptoms. So when you notice people that are going through some of these, whether they say a direct verbal comment to you, an indirect, or you notice their behavior change, or you just know that they have a lot going on in their life right now, what can you do? Here's some tips for asking that suicidal question. Usually what happens is you're sitting around, you're just kind of talking to that person, and they're starting to tell you a lot of things, what is going on in their life, or if you notice a lot of things going on in their life, you'll want them to get them off into a private setting, and just say, you know, Jan, do you want to sit down, do you want to talk to me, and tell me what's going on. Remember, a lot of them want to talk, they just don't know how to come to you and say, you know, I have some problems, would you take the time to talk to me? Usually when I start the conversation, I had one, a gal who just showed up in my office out of nowhere. I never did find out how she got my name or anything. And when I first started talking to her, she was pretty reluctant about talking about anything. But the more I just kind of kept working with her, the more she eventually started opening up and telling me what was really going on in her life. So, you know, sometimes you do have to be persistent with them, you know, to get them to open up. Make sure you give yourself plenty of time. So when I talk about that, this is really their time. They're going to start telling you their problems. I don't ever say, you know, I can totally relate to that because this is what's going on in my life. You really want to take the time to listen to them on what's going on with them, you know, not to keep breaking up what's going on in your life. And I really don't know whatever. I can't compare that or say that I know what's going on in your life and I understand, because I never completely can. Even if we have the exact same problems, you can't understand what they're going through, probably because there are some things that they're not opening up and telling you. So remember, how you ask the question is less important than that you actually ask it. It's that unasked question that is not good if you don't take the time to ask that question if they are having thoughts of suicide. And there's different ways that you can ask. These are the less direct approach ways. Have you been unhappy lately? And this is just to kind of get them talking. Have you been so very unhappy that you've been thinking about ending your life? Usually what I find works best, because remember I told you a little bit earlier that someone who is having thoughts of suicide and they have all these problems going on, they're holding a big secret in, and they've been have been thinking about this for weeks, months, or years. And you know how it is when all of a sudden you're getting a lot of anxiety and everything, and it's just kind of building up. And what I find when you actually ask someone if they're having thoughts of suicide, I go right to the direct approach. I say, you have all this going on in your life right now. Someone who has a lot of things going on in their life, they might be thinking about completing suicide. Are you thinking about completing suicide? A lot of times they're going to answer you right away. They're going to say yes, and you're going to notice a sense of relief in them. There's actually going to be a sigh. Their shoulders are going to drop, and they're going to be like, oh my gosh, someone finally cares enough to listen to me. And they're going to take the time to see what's going on in my life. I very rarely run up against any resistance here when I ask someone if they're having thoughts of suicide. Someone will come back and say, no, absolutely not. And then you have to kind of evaluate. Do you believe them or do you not? And if I do believe them, then, the way I look at it is now, I know this person is having problems. And if they ever would think about suicide, they know they can come to me because it is a scary topic and not everyone is comfortable talking about it. My husband called me the other day from work. We have a friend who is going through a lot of stuff. My husband has a lumberyard. One of their salesmen, this other guy, he lost a son to suicide. They were going through a lot of stuff in their life, and my husband and this other guy, they had the same salesman, and this salesman had just completed suicide. Well, this gentleman called my husband and talked to him about it. My husband just called me right away. He says, I didn't know what to say. You got to call him right away. Because he's not comfortable with talking about it. So if at this point, when you have a feeling that someone might be thinking about suicide, if you can't ask that question, you really need to go get someone who can ask that question. And people say, well, how do you know if you should ask them or not? I'll tell you, I feel it in my gut. It's just this gut feeling. Because up here in my brain is saying, no one would do that. No one would ever think about completing suicide. No one would take their life. But I always feel it in my gut, and it's just like I'm just going to burst until I ask that question.
Julie, working in VR, we do manage to meet a lot of people that are dealing with a lot of losses, and a lot of times I run into things that are very subtle. It's not direct, and I have found that it's just easier to err on the side of caution and ask rather than wait. I had a woman that had come in several times and she had cried and cried and cried several visits, and we weren't really getting anywhere. And one day she stopped crying and she got very quiet and she said, a lot of people commit suicide around here. And now it was very subtle, but it was enough to proceed with those questions. And so it's a matter of, if you have that gut feeling, just to ask and get it out there on the table, and we were able to go somewhere after that. But
when I'm
it's
having
very common.
Yeah, when I'm having conversations with people, I can just tell by the direction that it's going whether I need to ask that question or not. So like I said, you're going to feel it in your gut, and I won't beat around the bush. I just point blank and ask it. And like I said, if they're going to feel a sense of relief that someone is possibly going to be able to get them the help that they need. Because they do, remember I told you, they do not want to die. They just don't know how to ask for that help, and they don't know how to get the help that they need. So you would be that person, that link to get them the help. So we did the first one. We just asked them if they were having thoughts of suicide. We questioned them. How not to ask that question. You really want to be careful not to do this. You're not suicidal, are you? You wouldn't do anything stupid, are you? Because if you say things like this, they're done. They're done talking. I actually had a grandma called me. Her granddaughter was going through a really rough time, and the grandma was just freaking out. And she said, I keep asking you wouldn't do anything stupid like complete suicide, would you? And I said, and how was she responding? She said she wouldn't. I thought, I understand why not. Why? You're just telling them that this very important decision that they're going to make is a stupid decision. So they're going to kind of shut down. One thing, too, that I always try to address with people is the difference between saying commit suicide and complete suicide. I always use complete suicide, or I say they died by suicide. Commit, when people hear the word commit, it's like you commit a sin, you commit a crime. It just kind of, it makes it a little bit softer for the survivors that are left behind. It's not such a harsh word. I have a friend who lost a son. She'll just say, my son died due to a mental illness. And he did. It was the mental illness that took his life. So it just makes it a little bit easier on those survivors or the people who have been affected by suicide. You know, there's nothing wrong with it. It's just a softer way of saying that. So now we need to persuade them to get help. You just really need to listen to their problems, because if you don't listen, you don't see everything that's going on in their life, how are you going to know how to help them? If you don't know if they're having problems with drinking, or they lost a job, or they don't have enough money to pay their bills, how are you going to know how to refer them on? So here you just really need to take the time to listen to them. I try not to give any advice. They don't want to hear advice from you. You know, the one thing I will say is, you know, I know some people who can help you if you want to go with me, you know, to a counselor or something like that. But I won't tell them how to start running their checkbooks or how they should stop drinking and things like that. They're really not ready to listen to stuff like that. And remember, this is not counseling. The only thing we want to do is if we know a friend is in trouble, we want to give them the help that they need. Offer hope in any form. That's really what they want. They want hope, you know, just to say, you know, I know right now things don't look good. Things look really bad for you, but I know we can get you the help that you need.
Julie, I usually will use a little motivational interviewing because they're at that state of ambivalence, one way or the other, and help persuade them to get some help. So that's where MI comes in nice.
When we talk about that state of ambivalence, just like Kevin when he was on that bridge, I kind of put, I don't know if they can see me, but you're kind of like on a balancing scale. You know, part of you wants to live and part of you wants to die. And you're just kind of teetering back and forth on that balancing scale. The really scary thing about that is we don't know what's going to tip you to the life side, and we don't know what's going to tip you to the death side. And the smallest of acts can tip you over to that life side. There's a story of this young boy who he got up one morning. He decided that, you know, he had just had it, just much like Kevin, and he was going to complete suicide. But he was going to be nice, and he was going to go to school, and he was going to clean out his locker and bring everything home. You know, a lot of them will. Some of them will start arranging and getting everything lined up for the family members, and he was one of them. So he had his backpack, and it was full, and as he was walking out of school, he dropped his backpack, and someone stopped to help him. This wasn't a friend of his. And the kid who was thinking about completing suicide, he asked this other kid, he said, do you want to come over to my house to play video games? And the kid said, sure, I have nothing else to do. So they went to his house and played video games, and the young boy who was thinking about completing suicide, he never did. And at graduation, he went up to this young boy, they were both in the same class, and he said, do you remember that day when I dropped my backpack and you picked up my books? He said, I just want you to know that I was going home to complete suicide because I didn't think anyone cared or I had a friend in the world. So just that small act of showing that you care and that that child was not going home alone again was enough to tip them over onto the life side of that balancing scale. So when you're trying to persuade someone to get help, you'll want to ask them. A lot of times when I'm dealing with someone, I won't say, can you keep yourself alive until tomorrow and we can get you into a counselor? I'm not going to leave this person alone. I just don't do that. If they're having thoughts of suicide and they have agreed to get help, I'll make sure someone is going to stay with them, and then I'll right there with them, I'll call and get them an appointment with a counselor. You know, that's for the ones who, yeah, they're having thoughts of suicide, but they don't have a plan or anything. You know, you can ask them, how do you plan on doing it? The more detailed the plan, the more serious it is. If they have a plan at that point in time and, you know, they have the means to complete that plan, then I am telling them I'm calling law enforcement and we're going to get you up here to the hospital. We're going to get you where you need help. Because it just scares me at that point just to let them go. I'll let them know that that's what I'm doing. I'm always very, very upfront with them. At the case with the grandmother, I actually went out to the house and I did an intervention with the teenager. I've never seen a teen with so much anxiety in my whole entire life. She actually confessed to me that she had taken pills that morning and then she threw them up, so she had already attempted once that morning. She was just furious with her family. She had a plan. She knew how she was going to try again. And I had to tell her that, you know, with everything that I knew by law, she had to come, so she could either go willingly or unwillingly. And she did agree to go. with me. We called law enforcement and we came up peer to peer. She was willing, but her family wasn't very happy with me because the parents didn't really see it as being a problem. So they were kind of furious with me, but I had all that I needed. I had to come up and sign the affidavit that she did say she was going to take her life and she was going to try harm to herself. It was probably about 2 weeks later that the family finally did come to me and tell me, say thanks for saving our daughter's life, because they did not realize how serious it was until they got her up there. It was a serious situation with her. So always make sure someone stays with them until you can get them to that counselor or get them the help that they need. The next one is referring them. Suicidal people often believe that they can't be helped, so you may have to do more. Like I said, taking them directly to a counselor, setting up that appointment and getting them to commit, getting the mom and dad or getting the spouse or getting a friend to get them to that counselor. Doing that first step. If you say you're going to do something, you really need to make sure you follow through with it. Like I said, usually I just try to get them into a counselor as soon as I can. Capital Area Counseling does have on-call people. You can always take them to the emergency room. If you don't live in Pierre, you can always call your law enforcement, and I've done that several times. In fact, if I'm going out and I'm doing an intervention with someone, I always call my law enforcement first and let them know what's going on in case I would need help. You always have to remember the safety first for yourself. Remember, since almost all efforts to persuade someone to live instead of attempt suicide will be met with agreement and relief, don't hesitate to get involved or take the lead. Like I said earlier, if you're working with someone, you just have this gut feeling, but you're afraid to ask, find someone who can ask that question and can work with them. There's just too many times where I think people are reaching out, but we kind of don't take it as being serious when it really is a serious situation. For effective QPR, I like to do a lot of positive things. I like to say, I really want you to live. I'm on your side, and together. I use myself as a resource a lot because remember, they're feeling alone. So I say together we really can get this, help you through these problems. Who else would you like to get involved? Who else in your life are you really close to? Is there a brother, a sister, your best friend, a pastor? Who can you talk to? We need to let other people know what you're going through. Am I going backwards? Yeah, for some reason I am. Oh, I am. Sorry, guys. So always follow up with a visit or a phone call. Make sure that they went to that counselor that you had set up with them. I like to always let them know that they can get a hold of me if they need extra help. I always put myself out there as a resource, but I also let them know that I'm not on call 24/7. So if they're going to be texting me at night or calling me, I do need sleep, so I might not answer it. And I give them the different resources that they have, and I do have some of these available here. The Suicide Prevention 1-800 number, I always give them that. And my suggestion to you, I'm going to leave some cards here, is everyone should have that phone number in their cell phones. When I go out and do training, I meet kids right then and there, pull their cell phones out, because even though they're not supposed to have them in schools, they will have them. And, I tell the teachers ahead of time, don't yell at them, because I'm going to have them pull them out. And we put those cell phone numbers, that cell phone number, that number right in their cell phone, because you're going to need it and you're not going to have it. And with that number, I explain to them that this number can be used 3 different ways. If I'm working with someone who is having thoughts of suicide and I can't remember quite what to do, I could call that 1-800 number and they're going to help me. They're going to tell me what steps I all need to do and how I can help this person. It's also for a person who is in crisis. They can call the number, but we actually want to get people to be calling that number before they are in that extreme crisis. If you're just having a bad day, you're down, you could call this number, and there's trained counselors on the other end of the line who can help you through some things. So you remember when you apply QPR, you plant the seed of hope, and hope helps prevent suicide. I'm sorry. And here's that 1-800 number that I was talking about. And I have some cards that I will give you guys. So some basic rules to remember. If you have any doubt about a person's intention or concern about their behavior, get professional help for them immediately. So to save lives, we've always talked about why would someone complete suicide? If we would know all the whys, then maybe we could prevent suicides from happening. But I told you guys that suicide is very individual, so it's hard to say if someone has this, this, and this, they may be having thoughts of suicide. So another way that we're working on trying to prevent suicide is how are they completing? And I talked to you guys about the gun safety. The gun is very, very fatal. Usually you do not live through that attempt. My brother did, but he has a lot of medical conditions through it. When someone uses pills, we have a little bit more time, than if they use a gun. So doing that gun safety is really important. I'm just going to put these up here. 90% of those who survive even nearly lethal attempts do not go on later to die by suicide. My brother has never actually thought about it again. So if we look at the firearms, it is the leading cause of death method for suicide. Gun owners and their families are about 3 times higher at risk of suicide than non-gun owners, and it's just because that's in the house. Suicide is usually a split-second decision. Even though they've been thinking about it for a long time, they're on that balancing scale, but all of a sudden something will make them pop and they'll make that decision just like that. So if you have a gun around and they're thinking about suicide, that is just really dangerous. So I always tell, if you got someone around that's struggling and they're having a lot of problems, get the guns out of the house. If they have a mental illness, they need to get the guns out of the house. Most people who die by suicide do have some form of mental illness, whether it's diagnosed or it's undiagnosed. A simple step to increase the suicidal person's safety is to reduce the access of firearms at home. And you could call the police station, and they usually will come out and get them for you if you don't have any place else to store them. So making a difference, have a trusted friend outside the house, hold on to them, are a couple of things you could do. Having them locked up, having the keys to lock out, having the ammunition around the house. This is a big thing for me. To keep them safe, I don't know how many of you know, but as a young man, Abraham Lincoln was depressed and suicidal. A friend said of him, Lincoln told me that he felt like committing suicide often. Seeing suicidal warning signs, Lincoln's neighbors mobilized to keep him safe, watching over him and removing his knife and pistol. They pulled together the same kind of safety net QPR gatekeepers can build today, and which include making sure our president did not have access to the means of suicide. It was said that when he again became depressed later in life, he dared not even carry a pocket knife. And here's a couple different resources, and I'll leave those up. The 1-800 crisis line, that is a national number, and it's actually answered locally here in South Dakota. It rings into Sioux Falls. And the South Dakota Suicide Prevention website is very good. It's got a lot of resources on it. It can be very helpful in some of the work that you guys do. And if any of you guys have any questions, here is my email address. So with that, anyone have any questions?
I'll go ahead and take this off screen.
I surely can. There it is. You guys have any questions? Want to do a roll call of sites to see if there's questions,
Okay.
Janet? That work
Yeah,
better?
Aberdeen, do you guys have any questions out there?
No, I don't think so. Thank you very much, though, Julie.
The Brookings site, do you guys have any questions out there?
Nope, we don't have any questions here.
Huron?
Oh, no questions
Armin?
here.
Rapid City, how about you guys?
Nope, no questions here.
Oh, they got a full room there. Sioux Falls, do you guys have any questions?
I was just
Joseph?
wondering if we could refer them to the 211 hotline, if they can help them out.
Yes, in Sioux Falls and Rapid City, you can use 211, but we can't use that in Pierre. That's just available in Sioux Falls and Rapid.
And they'll take over the call?
Yes, that rings right into that hotline number. They'll ask you a series of questions, and they'll see that you're
We can
in
hang
process.
up. Do we just transfer them, or do we stay on the line?
I would just transfer them. Make sure
Okay,
that there's a
thank
connection
you.
there.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions in Sioux Falls?
Joseph, at the rehab center, are the slides available?
I'm not supposed to give those out, but I have a little booklet that I'm going to be getting out to everyone, and basically covered everything that I talked about without the slide form. It's really good reading, and it's just got everything in there. So
And-
you'll all get one of these.
Right. Everyone that signed up today, I will be sending them out to every office.
Thank you.
Anybody else have a question at the Sioux Falls sites? Spearfish? How about Watertown?
We don't have any questions here.
Okay, how about Yankton?
Thank you, but no questions in Yankton.
Okay, I guess that's about everyone. Anyone here in this room have any questions?
Well, I thank everyone for listening to me. Like I said, this is something that I'm pretty passionate about. I know in Sioux Falls they did their Step Forward to Prevent Suicide Walk and Run already. I think they did theirs in June. We have ours here in Pierre in September.
There's some suicide walk tomorrow or something going on.
In town?
I thought there was.
Not here.
Yeah. One here in Pierre is on September 6th.
You heard it on the radio?
Yeah, I thought I heard.
That's
Yeah,
our
on
promotion.
September
Okay.
6th, yeah. It's a pretty amazing event. If you know someone who has lost a loved one, you know, and to get them involved in the event. Our co-speaker this year is Twyla and Rick Doctor. They lost their son 14 years ago to suicide, and he's going to be giving a very important message on survival of how they got through that. And Rick and Twyla will tell you that the first year we did the rock walk, this is our third year. The first year we did the rock walk, they did not get involved. Last year they did get involved, and they said that really their healing did not begin until they attended that walk. So if you have people, if you know people who have lost loved ones to suicide, get them to either the Sioux Falls one or the Pierre one. And I think they do one out in Rapid City with their coalition out there. So that's all I have. Thank you guys.
Thank you, Julie.
Thank you very much, Julie. Really good. We'll probably call and cancel the bridge, so they'll put beeping in. And in Watertown, you guys may want to turn the air conditioner on.
Is it hot there?
Okay, we'll call and cancel the bridge so it doesn't keep beeping every 5 minutes. And make sure you put your system on mute, because otherwise it'll keep kicking the sound in. So thanks a lot and have a good day.